I'll attempt to introduce these guys. So 47 going 48. My name is David Thuo, father of three, two Gen Zs. Hi, Gen Zs. Okay, one of them is not Gen Zs, and one Gen Alpha. 6 world Abbott World Marathon major finisher, 5 times Comrades Marathon finisher, one of them having been just a few days ago. Founder Fitness with David and Breaking Barriers. Fitness with David formed out of my passion to support individuals and corporates to be the best versions of themselves through running. So very instrumental in FWD has been very instrumental in inspiring humans to run, which is one of our key slogans. When I'm not running, because some people, I believe, I'm told, imagine that I run for a living, but yeah, I run for a living for sure. But when I'm not running, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an aircraft engineer. I run a business in Wilson Airport. I'm the CEO of Dedonis Limited. We overhaul aircraft components for companies in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia. So that explains a bit of why I have to run at the 3 a.m.s, the 4 a.m.s, in addition to trying and chase other goals. But that's me. I'm the host. We have our speakers. We have Dr. Daniel Nduiga. He's a physician, cardiologist, electrophysiologist, and he runs the Heart Rhythm Medical Center. I've known Dr. Nduiga for a very long time, and we have interacted in this space of heart-related issues and checks on athletes, and I'm sure he shall be telling us a lot about that. And then with us as well, we are very honored to have Dr. Hazel Mburu. Dr. Hazel Mburu is a physician, cardiologist, working at Life Care Hospital Eldoret, and very conveniently and very nice for this audience. She's a recreational runner. Dr. Nduiga, I know, runs a business. I'm not sure if he runs as well, but Dr. Hazel is one of us recreational runners. She's also a member of chat room, amongst others. So when we started this conversation, she quite willingly came on board because it's an interest she has, and she'll mention a thing or two about it. And to the background of this webinar, we have lost a number of people who are supposedly fit, and that is what is expected through heart attacks, and it's not norm for fit people to die of heart attacks. So it's been a bit of a concern, and I must say that because most of us are in the running space, we look at it as being runners, but it's not only runners, and you shall see one or two examples, but there are many of incidents where fit people have actually collapsed, and either collapsed and have been taken to hospital, or have collapsed and passed on, unfortunately. Some of them being, quite recent. So we found it fit to actually go through this, and we had this issue again come up a few years ago, and we engaged Dr. Nduiga, and that's why this is June 2018. You can imagine that's actually about 4 years ago. No, sorry, my math is giving me away. 6 years ago, we lost a runner and others in actually one of them in one of the races. And then we took it upon ourselves to seek some guidance, and Dr. Nduiga will be unpacking a bit of that. So we even had a show with him. That's us here in K24. And here we organized a run in where he was working before, and he took us through again the talk and checked our vitals, which is something we should be doing quite often. In fact, I think that must have been, you see my son there, that was 6 years ago. Now he's bigger than me. Yes, but that is the background of this talk, and we hope to get more insights. The agenda is there, doing the introduction, and then we shall go through the rest. So just as a background, we know that exercise is important. Despite all that is happening, the fact remains that those are just isolated issues, but they are issues of concern. So we know that when done regularly, exercises strengthen the heart, improves the heart's ability to pump blood, and trains the heart to become efficient. It improves muscle ability to pull oxygen out of the blood, reduces stress hormones that can put an extra burden on the heart, and works like a beta blocker or slow the heart rate and lower blood pressure. And that's why it's important for us to listen in this conversation to see why then do we have these issues arising. We've got a number of factors. Of course, we as runners, I'm just bringing a background as we settle. There are many factors. We are a number of us, and many of us do check our heart rates. There are a number of factors, and I know the doctors will be unpacking these things. These that make our heart rates go up for those who may be paying attention, emotions and anxiety. I know all of us get a bit of that towards race or even when you're scared. Body temperature, if you are too hot, the terrain. And the reason why we are talking about this is to be able to understand when we have these changes as we work out. The terrain, wind, dehydration. That's why it's very instrumental for us as we run to make sure that we are not running out of getting too dehydrated, because remember the biggest constituent of the blood, which is what the heart pumps, is actually water. So when you lose a lot of that, then the blood transmission is not good, and of course that makes the heart, of course, struggle, just like a radiator without water. Diminishing glycogen stores. Exercise, of course, raises it. Hot and cold weather, emotions, that's repeated. Heavy exercise, of course, it's expected, but of course not for too long. Stress, fear, anxiety, panic attacks, low blood sugar, illness, I think some of them are repeated. Of course, for ladies, very important, pregnancy or menstruation, which is good for us as ladies for the ladies to understand those kinds of situations, because I think after this, we'll be able to be looking a little bit more keenly at our heart rates when when not just the pace and the strides, etc. Illegal drugs, and I know the doctors will unpack that. Of course, we are supposed to warm up. Consistency helps. So if you are random, then of course every so often you work out, then your blood heart rate can be sporadic. The gear you are in tight makes you hot. Caffeine, of course, attitude, age, time of the day when you run in the afternoon, etc. Currently, as workout guys, we have a wealth of wearable sports devices offering insights into our heart rate, and amongst other metrics. There's the resting heart rate, which is I think all those who have gadgets will be able to notice that, and it should be between 60 to 100. And some of the top endurance athletes have been found to have very low. Again, when you have this and it's not related to fitness, then there could be underlying issues. A lower heart rate can indicate that you have a strong heart or a better at extracting oxygen from the air through lungs, can be an indicator of an underlying issue. It's also associated with athletes because of being fit. And I know many of us have gone to a heart check and you've been told your walls are thick and you need to do extra checks to confirm that your heart is actually working. And doctor will take us through that. Of course, we have the maximum heart rate. And there are devices that actually you can set to check that, just for us who do it. Fortunately, nowadays, unlike in the past, you didn't have to wait to go to the doctor to see your heart rate. I think we're always seeing our heart rate every day. So there are various, for us who are not doctors, there are various ways of checking our heart rates. There is the usual formula of 220 minus your age, or 208 minus times 0.7 of your age, times 208 times 0.7. Of course, a formula like this, and I was talking to someone today, currently I'm heading to 48. If we use the same formula, 220 minus 48, whatever number we get, and another person who is 48 who doesn't work out like me, then we have the same sort of heart rate as our max, which is not correct because we are at different levels. So that is not necessarily very good, but maybe as a baseline for people who have same activity, maybe sedentary, that could probably be a start. You can get a stress test done in a lab. You've all seen athletes having things in their nose and etc. I mean, in their mouth and a lot of gadgets, so that can be done. Although you can do your own field heart rate maximum test, which is what we normally do to establish what is at your whatever level you are at fitness, what is your max heart rate. And basically, it involves a number there's a way it's done. So you run for 3 minutes, rest for 3 minutes or something close to that. Then you repeat the 3 minutes very hard again, and the highest reading becomes your heart rate. And then you're able to calculate all the heart rate ranges according to percentages of that heart rate that you get out of that. And we can always discuss that a bit more when we are talking about metrics of training, because today is about the heart conditions. We have these zones of training. We all see them. It's good for us to familiarize ourselves with them. I will not dwell too much of that so that we can go to the main topic of the day. But of course, we can. This is being recorded, and we can always. It's being recorded, and we can always be able to look up this and probably have further discussions, because knowledge is power. Those again is the heart rate zone. So you start off from the recovery, steady, tempo, threshold, and VO2 max, and each speaks to something. And when we train as athletes, we must be able to know. Today, if it's, for example, I'm supposed to be doing an easy, where should my heart rate be? If I'm supposed to be pushing, where should it be? So that every day you know what that training is supposed to give you, and not just train for the sake of it, so that the stimulus is gotten. And then, very important, so that you're not always pushing your heart. Every day cannot be a fast run. You must be able to take easy runs to recover both your muscles and the entire body. We have many heart rate monitoring devices. The key ones being those ones. So we have the watches, we have the Fitbits, we have Garmin. Of course, additionally to the gadgets, we also have these straps. Like I use this Garmin Prof for a bit more accuracy. Although they say the accuracy of these watches is quite good, but anyway, even better. We've got the Garmin, we've got the Polar, and then we've got this one by Coros. That is a wrist strap. When you research, you learn. I actually thought everyone uses the one next to the heart, but today I know, which is why I like researching, because then I get out a better person. Examples of heart rate zones. Actually, this is taken from my training the last 2 days. So you will get this is from Garmin. So sorry, let me go back. So this is from Garmin. So you can see this too. This was a run I did on Monday. I did 26 kilometers. And you can see where my heart rate is. My average pace for this one was, again, if you see here, it's the average. This is what Strava. So Strava is able to read from the running devices. So Strava picks this from Garmin. So this was my run that day on Monday. You can see I hit 5. I was at 4, zone 3, and then a bit of that during the early stages of the run. My average speed was 4:35. My fast pace was 6:15. I ended up at 3:33. And you can be able to tell why towards the end my heart rate is very high, because I kept on pushing. Then today, different. Today was a recovery. You can see I'm 68% in the blue, 20% in the white, 3% there, and I hardly went to threshold. Those are my parameters. So I was at 120, but basically I average, I think, at about 131. And that speaks to generally how training should be, or whatever is guided. But basically, you push, you must recover, push, recover. Again, a topic for another day. So at this point, I'll invite Dr. Hazel to take us through from here. So, Daktari, do you want to share your slides so that you have control? You can unmute, Daktari. I believe we have the right to unmute. For those guys joining us now, we have everyone on mute just because to have some controls and because of the numbers expected. Yeah, so let me just see if Richard, you can just check if Hazel has probably gone back to...
I've unmuted her.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, just hang on.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me share my slide.
Okay. Okay, let me stop sharing. You off so that we can pay attention to you.
You need to allow me to share my slides. Host has disabled participant screen sharing. Please allow me to share my slides.
Okay, Hazel, just give us a minute.
Let me make a host so that you remain co-host. Okay, I think you can share. Yeah, it's coming.
Can you see my slides?
Yes, yes.
And you can hear me? I'm loud and clear.
Yeah.
Um,
We just need to put to slideshow. Yeah, there you go.
All right. So thank you all. Thank you for this opportunity, David, to speak about a topic that's close to the heart, pun intended. I'm Dr. Hazel Mburu, as I have been introduced. I'm a cardiologist, a physician practicing in Eldoret. Of course, I think this is the hub of sports and running and athletics in Kenya. So it goes without saying that I have a certain interest in the effect of exercise on the heart. Most of my patients definitely not yet are normal people. I have a couple of athletes as we speak. I actually have one who admitted a couple of days who had an incident with a very high heart rate, and we're still sorting that out. So really, it's people who are extremely fit at their hearts. I mean, it's a really fascinating field, which I think has not been developed widely in currently, even in our cardiology circles. It's definitely something that we have to work on so that we can address these issues, because for sure we know that athletes and very fit people don't have the normal physiology, they don't have the baseline. So we need to, in our books, basically, we're usually taught using the normal physiological human being, and the athletes, I think, are sort of outliers, or are extremely fit people are outliers in this, so may not be very well covered. Usual my task is very easy. Mine is just the basics, the normal heart structure and function. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. It's always nice to just start from the beginning. Sorry, let me go back. So usually our left is on the right, and I'm looking at you. So usually your left, so the left side bars, the upper two, which are slightly smaller, lower two, which are slightly larger, are the ventricles. So the blue or the purple, depending on what color you're seeing, that's the oxygenated blood that is poor in oxygen. On the red side, on the left side, we have what we have as oxygenated blood. So basically, our blood comes in from our upper part of the body and our lower part of the body, and all comes into the right atrium. This then moves to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it's a direct pathway to the lungs, and this is very important, at least medically speaking. Because this is the vessels that are affected when we talk about pulmonary thromboembolism, which, as we know, has also been in recent past, it has been recorded as a cause of sudden death in fairly young people. So the blood goes off to the lungs and then back into the heart, the left atrium, then into the ventricle, and then out the big aorta, out into the rest of the body. So basically that's about it. So the functions of the heart, as I've already said, I think I've alluded to most of them as I was going through the schema. It pumps oxygenated blood to all parts of the body. It pumps hormones and other vital substances to the organs. So basically, like when the blood is coming into the side of the heart, some of it has come through the liver, it has come from other areas where there are important chemicals that have been deposited into the blood that then need to be transported to other parts of the body by now the arterial blood system. Yes?
Excuse me, Dr. Hazel, we are losing you a bit.
Yes?
The up and down, the network, I think, is up and down, so we are losing you.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You come up and
how
then...
often is it happening?
It's been unstable Sometimes it can't, so I thought it's going to stabilize, but it's still breaking. Could you, just try see if you can connect to another network.
Okay, let me
So like now
just
you're
hotspot.
clear, but I'm not sure whether that's stable.
Hang on, let me try and hotspot. This will probably work better. You let me know how this goes. So I've switched to the hotspot.
Okay. Sounds clear. Let's hope it stays stable. Thanks.
All right, sorry. I don't know how much guys I've missed. Anyhow, so the functions of the heart, basically just what probably has been missed is just the basic functions of the heart, which I'm sort of going through again. It's just the diagram where there's the left side of the heart and the right. There's the venous blood, which is received from the rest of the blood through the right side of the heart, the lungs, then back to the left side of the heart, through the left atria, down into the left ventricle, and then out through the aorta to the rest of the body. So this again is just a summary. So we said the functions of the heart include getting the oxygenated blood to all parts of the body. Then it pumps hormones and other vital substances to all organs. And then it gets the oxygenated blood from all the rest of the body to the lungs for oxygenation. So everything must pass through the lungs at some point. And then it maintains blood pressure. So this is basically how it maintains blood pressure. It's because blood pressure is basically a product of what the heart is putting out. And this is what we call the cardiac output. This is what the heart pushes out in one stroke of contraction. And then the heart rate also is important. So that's why your blood pressure is part of the, it's a product of heart rate, your cardiac output, the resistance in your blood vessels, and all that. So that's how the heart is important in maintaining your blood pressure. So this is just a schema, I think the grander scheme of things, where your heart and how everything works. So there's a lower, everything comes from the lower part of the body to the right side, we said, and then from the upper part of the body down into the right side of the heart, and then out into the pulmonary artery. So onto the right side of the heart, through to the lungs. We said the pulmonary artery is of particular importance because this is the site of clots, or lower down, closer to the lungs. So the more ahead it is, the closer to the heart, if there's a huge clot, then the more dangerous that is. And these big clots usually just, we call it proximal, i.e. close to the heart. These are the ones that are more often than not dangerous and may even cause sudden death. The ones that are closer into the lungs, the smaller branches, those ones may just cause pain, some breathlessness, and usually may not be lethal. But if they're not taken care of, can progress to be bigger clots that come closer to the heart and can therefore be dangerous. So from the lungs, the blood comes back into the pulmonary vein, into the left atrium, then into the left ventricle, and then out into the aorta, and then to all the other blood vessels. So one of the important things that I think this will be mentioned later is before the heart, as the blood exits the heart through the aorta, they're what we call coronary arteries. So the heart provides itself with blood before it gives anybody else. So the coronary arteries are very important. Blockage of them causes what we call heart attack. At least I think that's what people call it, but we call it myocardial infarction. But I'm sure that's likely going to be covered, as that can also be a cause of sudden death. So characteristics of a healthy heart. So usually people who have healthy hearts have a lower resting heart rate. They have a lower resting blood pressure. Basically, they are better conditioned. Their body is able to operate. The lower your heart rate, the better. Yeah. So the body is so well conditioned that it's able to maintain a low heart rate and a low resting blood pressure. Then maintaining your heart rate and your blood pressure within a specific range. And I think you've covered about the heart rate zones. And that's why somebody who's much fitter may be able to maintain their heart rate in zone 2, vis-a-vis somebody who doesn't exercise much and may get their heart rates up to zone 5. And then faster recovery. Also this heart rate and blood pressure maintenance during exercise actually gives you better endurance, because the faster and the higher you raise your heart rate and your blood pressure, then it becomes too strenuous in your body to maintain that. So your endurance is much lower. So that's also part of those are some of the characteristics of a healthy heart. Then we also know that people who have healthier hearts, fitter people, have a faster recovery in blood pressure and heart rate after exercise. Sometimes we simulate exercise scenarios, because I'm not going to review you when you're running. You're not going to come to my office for your echo or your ECG when you're running. So we actually simulate this scenario by putting you on a treadmill, what we call a treadmill test or an exercise stress test. So on a treadmill, stress your heart a little bit by increasing the speed and the incline of the treadmill, and then that way we are able to get significant data. So this is what I wanted to, of course, athletes are not just talking about, we're all athletes in our own right, let's just say that, and how we compare the normal heart to the athlete's heart. So for you to get an athlete's heart, you basically need to be exercising for 1 hour more than 5 times a week, around 5 times a week. So I think for a lot of people in the audience, this is their usual. So you have qualified to actually have an athlete's heart, and I mean, you probably do have an athlete's heart, and this is why this needs to be discussed. So we can just see, I think, from even just eyeballing, that we can see this heart on the left, on my left, on the right of your screen, is much larger, slightly larger than the one on the left, the normal one. So the changes are LV hepatic, left ventricle. So the main focus is the left ventricle. The left ventricle is the one that bears most of the burden of pumping blood out. It is the one that bears the burden of pumping blood out, because it's from here, from your aorta, all your other blood vessels. So basically the left ventricle does all of the heavy lifting, and therefore will naturally be more muscular. Actually, even if you compare it with in a normal heart, a normal person's heart, the LV is much thicker and more muscular than the right. The right doesn't do too much heavy lifting because it's pumping blood to the lungs. The lungs are low pressure areas, and therefore the RV does not require to be muscular. But yes, as much as the normal heart has a more muscular left side, for the athlete it is even more muscular. It's just like when you lift weights more, you become more muscular, larger than somebody who wouldn't be lifting weights. And this is just a normal adaptation. But also this comes with it has its pros and its cons. And then there's a bit of right ventricular dilatation. So the right side of the heart is slightly dilated compared, but it is not at this state. This is just normal physiological adaptation. Then there's atrial enlargement. These two, the atria are slightly larger, but all these are just normal physiological adaptations. Then there's increased relaxation. Diastole just means the filling time, the time when our heart is relaxing and filling up with blood. So it's increased, but this makes sense because I mean, my heart rate is lower, therefore my diastole or my relaxation time will be longer. And then, of course, it has greater contractile strength because we can see it is more muscular than a normal left ventricle. Then there's increased volume. Volume, as we said, is just that amount of blood that the heart pumps out on the left with one stroke as it contracts. And then it's a product of the cardiac output. So there's something called athlete's heart syndrome. It is not a disease. It is a normal adaptation. Non-pathological, i.e., it is not a disease and it has no symptoms. It is characterized by an enlarged heart and a lower than normal heart rate, which is between 40 to 60 per minute. Sometimes this can drop even lower. We've done ECGs on sports people, resting heart rate about 35, 32, 35, thereabout, and they're perfectly okay. And then but compared to the normal resting heart rate for normal hearts, which is between 60 to 100 beats per minute. So we've said this is physiological, it's adaptive, it is normal remodeling. The heart has remodeled in a way to deal with the extra demand of this cardiac loading, the excess demand on the heart. It occurs in athletes, as I had mentioned, who exercise over 1 hour, mainly of dynamic exercises. So we're talking about at least 4 to 5 hours a week. And I think a lot of people in the audience, as we have said, reach this criteria. Dynamic exercises is usually running, swimming, cycling. Dynamic basically means moving. The difference is because what about weightlifting? What about CrossFit? Do we have the same? Most of the work, anyway, most of the remodeling is known to occur in dynamic exercises. Yes, there's an element of remodeling, but it is not that great in like these other sports. One of the things that must be differentiated from the normal athlete's heart syndrome is something we call hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. I'm sure Dr. Nduiga will probably allude to this. But hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is basically a disease where the heart muscle now is larger than normal. It is a disease. Sometimes that eyeballing, you may not be able to tell the difference, but then there are certain differences, especially in your EKG and stuff like that, and also in your echo and in the relaxation patterns that then would give us an idea that it will come, or rather hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Reason, this is one of the most common causes of sudden death in young people, i.e. most athletes who collapsed and died, soccer players, basketball players. The list is so long when you try and Google about incidences of sudden cardiac death in sports people. The list is endless, majority of whom is likely to be hookah. So again, just the difference, the normal heart, I think we've covered that. The athlete's heart is there in the middle, and then there's the abnormally enlarged. And this occurs in certain disease conditions, in hypertension, in people who've had previous myocardial infarctions, aka heart attacks, people with diabetes, people with other diseases. So this must be differentiated, and often we're able to differentiate with the ECG, your electrocardiogram, and also on your echo. So about heart rate response, I think David had covered partly to this, and we've already talked about it, but this is just diagrammatic. So we can see the untrained is the blue curve. You can see the heart rate, the resting heart rate, slightly, it's higher. So this one is around 62, 68, thereabouts, but actually majority are above 70. Then it, as we exercise, then we start to exercise. So there's a sharp rise. You can compare with the trained. There's a sharp rise, and then after, at the peak of exercise, the heart rate still continues to rise. Vis-a-vis the black curve for the trained athlete, or the trained, a well-conditioned heart or a healthy heart, you can see that the resting heart rate is likely to be less than 60. And then when we do start to exercise, the rise is very gradual. The slope is not as steep. And then when they get to peak exercise, that's when they plateau. So you see, if you're able to maintain this heart rate, vis-a-vis this guy whose heart rate keeps climbing, this gives you better endurance. And that's why, athletes, you're fitter, you're able to keep running longer vis-a-vis somebody who's not been running. And that's why I think we're also talking about consistency, because it's consistent loading of the heart that then helps it with remodeling. And therefore, you get these adaptations that make you better, and you tolerate your exercise actually better. And then we can see once the exercise has stopped, we can see the athlete's heart rate drops sharply and then drops lower, and it drops faster. So this one takes about 2 minutes to get back, 2 to 3 minutes to get back to the resting heart rate. This chap who does an exercise, the one in blue, his heart rate is still high. We're talking about 5-10 minutes later, he still hasn't come back his resting heart rate. So like we said, there's lots of reasons where that varies, the exercise and the blood pressure from age. We've talked about our 220 minus age. Also, as we age, our blood vessels become stiffer, and therefore this would elevate our, especially our blood pressure. Hormones, testosterone would increase vascular resistance, i.e. if you're higher testosterone, high vascular resistance basically just means higher blood pressure. There's higher resistance in your vessels, therefore your blood pressure is higher. So testosterone usually would increase the blood pressure slightly. Estrogen causes our blood vessels to relax, and therefore our blood pressure, especially in females, may be slightly lower. Maybe if you're to compare to a male and a female, back to back, same age, same level of fitness, weight, BMI, race, all those things, you probably find that maybe the female, the blood pressure is slightly lower than the male. Then cardiovascular fitness, we said increased systolic blood pressure and peak workload. The fitter you are, we said there's a variability, how your heart rate and your blood pressure change is definitely different than somebody who doesn't exercise. Medications, there's those that we give intentionally to lower your blood pressure if you're hypertensive. Then there are those that do the opposite. Even things are just as basic as your NSAIDs, your diclofenac, aceclofenac, all those your painkillers. Some of them may raise your blood pressure because of vasoconstriction, causing resistance in your blood vessel, and also just by increasing water retention. The more fluid you retain, the higher your blood pressure. Even salt, they say excessive salt in your diet causes anything that will cause fluid retention, basically will cause your blood pressure and your heart rate to go up. Genetic factors depending, I mean, your race, some races have been found to have slightly higher blood pressure, slightly higher heart rate, and that sort of thing. And also maybe genetic conditions that may be in the family. And then type of exercise, as we have said, also affects the determinants of your blood pressure. So if it's endurance training, if it's running, if it's dynamic, vis-a-vis isotopic, the heart rate rise and the blood pressure rise may vary depending on the type of activity. So I'm sure this is gonna, somebody's gonna go through this. I think Dr. Nduiga will elaborate more on this. So causes of sudden cardiac arrest. I think we've all agreed the reason why we're having this conversation is because there have been increased numbers of people collapsing and dying. People who we feel, I mean, they're really fit, they had no business collapsing and dying. So what's going on? So lots of times people may have coronary artery disease. Basically, as we said, the coronaries are the blood vessels that branch out of the heart. The heart feeds itself blood before it sorts anybody out. So those are our coronaries. So sometimes, and they say usually actually above the age of 45, the most common cause of cardiac arrest is actually coronary artery disease, which is likely undiagnosed. Then they say usually below 30 or 35 below, then it's usually other causes, the HCMs, the hypertrophic cardiomyopathies, arrhythmias. Dr. Nduiga will go into that. Abnormal heart rhythms, either because of genetic variations or other causes. Then heart valve disorders. I work in Eldoret. There's a disease called rheumatic heart disease. It is actually, I can say, endemic in this area. I've worked in other areas in Kenya, but I have never seen numbers of valvular heart disease like I have. And this usually affects much younger people. Thing is, some of these diseases may be asymptomatic. Patients may be very stable, but they are there. Most of the times, not causing any trouble. But sometimes this can actually lead to issues and even cause sudden cardiac death. High blood pressure. A lot of people are walking around without knowing what their blood pressure is. High blood pressure, it's hypertension, a silent killer. Doesn't have symptoms most of the time. So you may not even know that you're at risk. Alcohol abuse, I shall not belabor the point. I think we all know excess of anything is dangerous. So alcohol abuse, apart from just the acute, it raises your blood pressure, raises your heart rate acutely, but also it can also cause what we call cardiomyopathy, and that's disease of the heart muscle, to the point where your heart as a pump actually just fails and it's stable to what it should. Electrolyte imbalances, I think these are very important. Dehydration, especially during long runs, in very extreme temperatures, and it's very hot. And this also can be a cause of cardiac arrest because you interfere. Basically, your heart contraction starts with some electrical impulse somewhere. And this electrical impulse is started out by exchange of electrolytes, others coming into the heart cell and all that. So if you severely affect your electrolytes, then you can actually have a cardiac arrest. Then trauma or injury to the heart due to surgery, infection, a previous heart attack. Previous heart attacks can cause scarring, injury to the heart muscle, and therefore that segment of the heart would be more liable to dangerous heart rhythms, which can cause sudden death. Trauma, including, I think there was a World Cup where he was called Zidane, smacked some guy with his head in the middle of the chest, in the sternum. That can actually cause something called commotion cardiac. So it can actually cause abnormal heart rhythm by just getting a serious, a severe hit to the center of your chest. And this could actually lead to sudden death. Electrocution, mainly the cause of death in electrocution is that disturbance of the rhythm of your heart. Cardiomyopathy and changes in the heart muscle, we have said cardiomyopathy just basically means disease of the heart muscle. And there's a whole myriad of causes. Drugs and medication, we have talked about that, over-the-counter, prescribed drugs, drugs of recreation, doping, all those fall under this. So we need to also be very careful in terms of even sometimes, performance enhancing substances, especially things like Red Bull and things like those. Some of those actually may increase your heart rate. You don't know, you may be taking this, you don't already know, maybe you already had an issue with your heart rate. And then you take something that overstimulates your heart, and that could also get you into and send you into abnormal heart rhythm. that will cause sudden death. Then we've talked about genetic disorders. Why this is important: if you have a young person who has collapsed and died suddenly, what we call sudden cardiac death, part of the history that we take, have you had any other relative who collapsed and died suddenly? Especially we see there's a pattern, young fellows, and then, I mean, we need to start asking ourselves, do these guys have a genetic predisposition? And do we need to screen his brothers, his sisters? Do we need to advise on avoidance of exercise or that sort of thing? Then congestive heart failure, as it just speaks for itself, is just failure of the heart. And this can cause sudden death. Then people who are born with birth defects, heart defects, majority may be diagnosed in childhood if they are severe. But a lot of them, like small holes in the heart, like ASDs, have been found incidentally. Some of this actually, a lot of women may be discovered in pregnancy because of the increased demand of the heart in pregnancy. Sometimes we find these women during their pregnancies, yet they were completely asymptomatic in their entire life. So those are just an overview, the causes of sudden death. I put this in, it seems very random, but I just wanted to put it in case it's not mentioned. I think one of the most important things as we are speaking about sudden cardiac death is use of, it would be good to have what we call automated external defibrillators. It's a small gadget. It's actually the size maybe of an A5 or an A4. Let's say an A4 leaflet. And this should actually be found in public places. I think personally, the only places that I have seen an AED in E10 at one of Kerio View, because there's a lot of recreational tourist runners there, and I think they have also. But this should actually be available everywhere. They're life-saving and they're extremely easy to use. They have diagrams to show you where to put the pads. So basically, it's like a small suitcase, the size of an A4, we have said. So you just open it. It has pads. It tells you this one put on the sternum, this one put on the left side. It actually speaks to you. Then it reads the rhythm of the person. And then this is for a patient who, so it reads the rhythm. Let's just simplify this. And then it tells you. So it will tell you whether to shock, whether to carry on CPR. So very easy to use. And this would actually really save lives. I think a lot of times when we see, like when players have collapsed on the pitch, those who have made it, probably there's an AED on site. And this completely changes the prognosis and the outcome. So I think we need to start talking. I know a lot of us here are in lots of different fields, maybe influential wherever they are. And as an athlete and somebody who exercises a lot, this would actually be in your own personal interest to have somewhere near you. And I'd also like to challenge David and other people who organize runs and that sort of a thing. It would be nice if we had AEDs around. I don't think they cost too much. It's a one-off buy. If you buy a good quality one, it should last a while. So these are conversations that we need to start having. We should have them in the office. We should have them everywhere. They should be like fire extinguishers. In fact, I think laws should be passed where AEDs must be a must, like the way we have fire extinguishers. So I think you guys will help us drive that agenda, because we know this is life-saving and it is important. And you never know when you'll be the one who requires one. So I think just to just summarize, and I'm sure we're going to go through this, understand your risks. So you just need to know your risks. Yeah. Are you known to have high blood pressure? Have you been reported to have high cholesterol? Are you overweight? Are you obese? Do you have diabetes? Do you have, or even a history of diabetes, especially in your parents, first-degree relatives? This is important. So if you know your parents or your siblings have high blood pressure, then it is good at least keep checking. Even diabetes, keep checking. At least if it's normal, then once in a while. Yeah, so just keep following up. And the older we get, the higher the risk for these things. So the higher probability that you shall develop. Most of them are asymptomatic. So you're not going to know that you have it unless you check for it. Then you don't get regular physical exercise. There's family history of early heart disease. So basically in females who, males below the age of 45, if you've had a male relative first degree who's collapsed and died suddenly, that's a first degree with early heart disease, then that you or your family need either to get screened, or you need to, just find out if there's anything underlying that you should also be aware of. For females, that is above the age of 55. You have a history of preeclampsia, pregnancy-induced hypertension for the female. So if you've had hypertension in pregnancy, then the odds of you developing hypertension later in life are actually higher than somebody who did not have hypertension in pregnancy. And a woman age 55, once for female, once you're above 55, perimenopausal, menopausal, you start to lose your protective effect on the heart. So your risk also almost approaches that of a man. So as we grow older as females, towards the age of 55, towards perimenopause and menopause, we need to have our screening done. And for men above the age of 45, then heart healthy habits. This one I'm sure you've all heard about, are probably living that gospel, but we don't tire from emphasizing. Because prevention is definitely better than cure. So get your blood pressure checked. It's very easy. It's done every year. I usually tell my patients, and there are relatives who are accompanying them, even as you just come to bring your husband to the clinic or your kids, just ask the nurse, please take my blood pressure. More often than not, I don't think they'll mind. Cholesterol, have you checked at least once a year? If there's an issue, repeat within 3 months, but at least just have your cholesterol checked. Cholesterol has no symptoms. And there are people who you'd be surprised. People usually say, oh, but I'm very lean, I run. Of course, if you run a lot, it's unlikely your cholesterol will be high. But there are lean people who have terribly high cholesterol. Some of these things may be familial, some of them may just be your lifestyle. So it's always good to at least have your cholesterol. Then enjoy your heart healthy. Then maintain a healthy weight. Get your regular exercise. Smoking. Nobody should smoke. Smoking is just really bad for you. I mean, if you're smoking, then you're actively looking to have a relationship with a cardiologist. Then we should sleep 7 hours or more than 7 hours. Easier said than done. But if you can, that would be great. And then manage your stress levels. I think that's about it. I think we'll take questions at the end. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. That was fantastic, Hazel, and very, very insightful. And for me, and I know the questions will come later as we get ready for Dr. Nduiga. I mean, even as runners, we probably consistently run, and I know some of us feel that we have not used any electrolytes. Is that necessarily a good thing? Are we over a very long period of time probably putting our hearts at strain, which will probably manifest itself after probably 3, 4, 5 years, but the damage has been done every other day. So very, very insightful. Thank you so much. So we'll just get ready for Dr. Nduiga so that he can take the rest away. But this is fantastic. Lots of learning. And I guess there is actually even more ahead. So.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Dr. Hazel, please make Dr. Nduiga a host, kindly.
Sorry, how do I do that?
Just click his name. I think what I did, I gave out my rights as a host somehow when there was a small delay. But just yeah, just click his name or mine, whichever you see, then you can make host. And yeah, I need to change that to co-host. Sorry about that.
I can't see his name. Let me make you.
Yeah, if you can, then just make me back host.
There you go, co-host now. Yes.
Okay. Okay, let me find Dr. There's a big crowd, so I need to find Dr.'s name. Just bear with us. Any additional comments there that you can?
Yeah, so maybe as you make Dr. host, I can Dr. Hazel, there was a question from Justin.
Yes.
No, I don't think that was the first one. Sorry. Let me just start with the first one. There was a question from Blessed Me who says, my resting heart rate keeps on oscillating from 43 to 55, depending on the kind of run or rest. Is this normal?
Yes, it's normal because your heart rate is never a single figure. Your heart rate changes by the second. Even a thought like, oh my God, did I get the iron on? That would cause your heart rate to go up. So it is okay. And also depending on how strenuous your run was. Yeah, because we talked about regardless during or after a run. So how strenuous was it? I mean, what was the terrain? What was the weather? What's your hydration status? A whole lot of things. So your heart rate is never a single figure, and it really varies. It's very, very, very dynamic.
Okay,
Thanks.
Dr. Nduiga, you can unmute yourself now. Let me cross-check that again, just 1 second. Okay, Doctor, you can unmute.
Thank you so much, sir. Looks like I can't put up my video yet.
Okay. Dr. Hazel, just go to your name and change from just to your name, Dr. Hazel. And then, Dr. Stop sharing yours. Dr. Hazel.
I'm still on share screen. Do we stop?
Yes, stop share.
Oh no.
Okay, let me share, David, and then you sort that in the back end so that Dr. can continue.
Can you still see my slide?
No, it's okay. I think she should be able.
Yeah.
Or do I log out and log back on?
No,
Yeah.
you're good.
Here we go.
Sorry, you can go on. I think your slides are up. I've put them
Sorry?
up. Dr. Nduiga's slides are up.
Okay.
You can see
All
them.
right. Sawa. Good.
David, you
Thank
can
you
see
so
them.
much.
Yes, I can. Hazel, just go off and back on kindly so that I think the host comes back.
Do you want me to, sorry? I leave and rejoin.
Yes. You're good now. Doctor, you can go ahead unless you got muted again. Let me just check that. Sorry,
I'm
guys.
muted, but I cannot share video.
You cannot share video. Okay, let me
I
just.
can't hear sound. But
you can proceed. Sorry, guys, we had to put these measures. We had Zoom bombing the other day and we had to end a presentation, but we are going on, so we are all right. We saw that out. Carry on, Daktari.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, leisure athletes. I'm really grateful to be here. I recognize the presence of David, with whom I've had a long-standing relationship, and Jack, whom we met first and then introduced me to David and to the rest of you. I'm also seeing my long-term friends, George Morage, in the group, and a few other friends, including Kai and my workmates, Derek. Thank you so much for this privilege. Thank you, Dr. Hazel, for a very insightful presentation that was very comprehensive. So I'll do the easy part, actually. Now that you've established the foundation, I'll talk about what happens when things don't work the way they are supposed to, including, unfortunately, it looks like 2 weeks ago or so, we lost somebody. So when you do have heart disease in athletes, it's very dramatic. It's unexpected because participants are otherwise healthy. We look up to them because they're the epitome of health. Presence of onlookers doesn't help because it's shocking. It's not in private, and it leaves people traumatized. So this is why it actually hits the headlines, and you see it the world over. There are so many videos out there. It hits the headlines, and everybody goes like, "If this can happen to athletes, what about us who don't exercise?" By the way, thank you, David, for the challenge. I will begin to run, not just when I feel like, but regularly.
Well done. And try and do your screen now. I mean, your video.
Yes, looks like I can.
There you go. There's the guy.
Let me do that. No, sharing is not turned on, unfortunately.
Sharing. Okay.
It's not turned on. but my video is on. I can see
Yes,
that.
now you can share. Well done. Yeah.
Can you see my slides?
Yes, they are coming up. Now just
We can.
full
Yes.
screen.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. So once again, we're talking about the impact of heart disease in athletes. And because you look up to these people, it's actually quite significant and hits the headlines, and it's in all our minds, and it's very traumatic to many, not just to the person we lose or the family. So a lot of this, my colleague, Dr. Hazel, has already gone through. So I want to belabor this. Just to say that as you get older, we actually get what is known as non-communicable diseases coming in. The use of anabolic steroids, peptide hormones, and stimulants are actually significant cause of heart disease. We know that in the market, there are a lot of stimulant products coming in, including the very famous catchphrase. Is it a mantra or catchphrase that world over, Red Bull gives you wings? And so many others that you know better than I do, that things that are known to help you build the muscles you need, the six-pack, tone your tummy, get those muscles seeing. All of these things, they have a significant effect really on our hormones, indirectly on our hearts. Atherosclerotic coronary artery disease is a major cause in older athletes. So Dr. Hazel has already gone through this in detail, so I won't do that. But suffice to say that you're going to be talking about the muscle. That is a significant reason for sudden cardiac death in athletes. We're going to be talking about the lungs, which are supposed to be right here, and the blood vessels. This is a diagram that brings out the coronary arteries. What these arteries do is that they supply the heart muscle with blood. So when these arteries begin to block, which is a process that begins really unfortunately as early as 25, accelerates by the time we get to 50, is really established by the time we get to 65. That is, if you do not arrest these things in terms of our lifestyle. Look for the risk factors. There are some we call modifiable, some we call non-modifiable. We'll be going through some of them and then seeing how we can risk categorize ourselves, seeing what are the risk factors that are there, looking and seeing if some of these apply to us and what can we do about them. So this is a major, the arteries on the left are quite major because probably about 70% of our heart, while the ones on the right actually control our heartbeat. And a lot has already been said about a heartbeat, so we'll be talking about that a little bit in this presentation. So this is an aspect that has come to the fore quite recently, or rather has come to the fore more recently. It talks about electroactivity of the heart. So the heart has heart muscle, which you'd call the structure of the heart, or the housing of the heart. It has the blood supply, which you can call the plumbing. Then it has the wiring. So you can have issues arising from the heart muscle, which is the structure of the heart, or the plumbing, which is the blood supply, or the wiring. And all of these are significant because they can lead to adverse effects, fainting episodes, collapse, and unfortunately, even sudden cardiac death. So what are these conditions? Types of heart diseases can be categorized. And we mentioned that before the age of 40, it's mostly congenital, which means that these are things that happened in the formation in the womb of that particular individual, and he carries on in life with them, usually not affecting him too much, but probably limiting his activity. And then finally, when he's now very active in life, this comes up. We see this quite a bit, or it's been in the news quite a bit where the footballers are concerned. And you've had a disproportionate number of blacks actually losing their lives on the field, especially football field, in contrast to the whites, many of whom have actually been saved. Some of these conditions include hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy. This is actually in the genes. Then actually worsens with age. Arrhythmogenic retroventricular dysplasia. Don't worry about the terms, but just to let you know, these things actually arise. And this affects both the rhythm and the heart muscle structure. And then you have coronary artery abnormalities. This can actually arise and cause problems, or either manifest really at any age. It doesn't have to be when they're elderly, because this is something that the person was born with. So you can have defects in the electrical activity of the heart, electrical system of the heart, which may induce unstable and dangerous arrhythmias. Some of these include some of the names that we have here, which I don't think I'll go into in terms of mentioning them, but I'll say that there can be abnormal rhythms that flow through the heart. And as a consequence of this, you can get the heart misbehaving in terms of its heartbeats and ceasing activity. And you get, it's called cardiac standstill or a systole. Yeah. And some of these things, when picked up, can actually be controlled. We actually are not yet at the point where we can cure most of them, but you can actually cure the WPW. We are able to do what is known as cardiac ablation, which is available in this country. And when we do that, we can actually cure this and save the life of the person. The others, most of the time, we end up having to either give medication or fix what is known as a pacemaker. We'll be discussing that vis-a-vis the AED that Dr. Hazel has already alluded to. Stimulants can cause dangerous arrhythmias. I'd like to at this point raise the issue of what is known as a holiday heart. Holiday heart is a heart that reacts or races in response to alcohol taken about 72 hours earlier. So that if you take some alcohol on Wednesday and then you want to do a run on Saturday, you could end up with a problem simply because you took some alcohol. Yeah. So how do these things manifest? When someone has a heart disease or heart condition, how do they manifest? We can get presyncope or syncope. This means fainting, getting woozy and almost fainting. Maybe you're able to hold on to something and you're able to keep yourself, seal yourself from fainting or actually fainting. There's heart fluttering or pounding, and this is actually felt. Yeah. Most of the time, unless you've been through a period of intensive exercise, you shouldn't feel your heart. But this means that you're actually either resting and you're feeling it when you're actually resting, or you're feeling it beyond the level of activity that you actually participated in. There's easy fatigability, which means that you're getting tired more than usually. Yeah, you realize that the level of tiredness is more than what has been in the past. Shortness of breath, this has been described variously as difficult to catch breath, or realizing I'm actually short of air, I need to go to somewhere where there's a bit of wind, or where there's an opening where I get more breath or more air coming in. Dizziness, and unfortunately, sudden unexpected death. This has actually been in the headlines quite a bit, even with the documented videos of what has happened. And I'll show you some of them to see if we can illustrate some of the points you're trying to make to be able to save lives and enhance exercise and enhance the health of our population. So how do we evaluate you? We encourage actually all of you to be evaluated. David did raise some of the things that we've done together. We've actually had screening done at a gym in a hotel in the Upper Hill area. That was one of the pictures he showed there. We did a physical examination and an ECG. We've had a screening done at Karen Hospital after one of your runs. I think that was in 2019. And since then, we haven't been as active. But I would like to commend some of the runners that you do have who come in for regular checkups. I know Jack comes in for a yearly checkup, and that's really important because he wants to keep exercising. Useful screening tools in asymptomatic and low-risk individuals include just an assessment of personal history. We'll ask you a few questions. Who are you? How old are you? Have you had any medical ailments in the past? Tell me about your history, any previous admissions, previous surgeries. Do you experience any of these things? Then I'll go through this history. Do you feel any of this? I felt any of this, especially at the end of a race or when you're resting. Yeah, so that helps us screen you, try and risk stratify you, see where it is you fall. Family history. You'll be very interested in knowing about your family. Usually interested in parents and first-degree relatives. So interested in have they been ill, any history of sudden death that is unexplained, any history of heart attacks or anything like that. We're very, very interested in that. We like to examine you and see. Sometimes the heart of an athlete changes and there are some added sounds that we had. So if it's those, we'll not bother with them. We'll probably just take you to the next stage, have a look, and then release you and clear you. A 12-lead ECG. Now, this is very important because what the Italians do. Italians, before you start in competitive athletic activities of football, actually take all their young men through this. And they're able to pick up quite a number of what is known as genetic cardiac abnormalities, especially the arrhythmias. They're able to do this. They have a good established program. We may not be there yet as a country, but we can actually do that as a team. We say that everybody goes through this because it's relatively inexpensive. I would actually say that this, in really any facility you'd go to, should not cost you anything more than 3,000 to 5,000. That is counting in a bit of consultation charges, which in some of the prime hospitals here is about 2,500 or 3,000. And ECG would probably be about 1,500, at the most 2,000. So with 5,000 shillings, you can actually be screened. We've done this for the fit run athletes before, and we had a very good cautionary rate. Maybe, I'm not sure what the cost was, David will probably inform us, but it's been a while since we last did this. So if we do this for us, we'll actually catch a majority of what would actually be issues that we can be able to sort and actually restore health to athletes. This is taken together with everything that has been said by Dr. Hazel and David in terms of what you should do personally, how you should go about your exercise, how should you rehydrate, what time you actually exercise, how are the weather environments, how are the weather conditions. And then please remember, I've mentioned that alcohol taken 72 hours earlier can actually affect your exercise that particular day. What about how do we categorize high-risk athletes? Hazel has mentioned 45. I'd actually bring it down lower to 40 years. So if you're older than 40, please come in. We actually assess you properly. The first one is when you are a low-risk athlete. You've been doing this for a long time. You've not had any problems. This should actually suffice for you in terms of assessing you and evaluating you. If you're starting and you're older than 40, please allow us to be able to assess you properly. look for medical illness that you might be having, hypertension, diabetes, asthma, if you have any hormonal problems, if there's any history of admission, any surgeries. We're interested in all of these things. They shouldn't stop you from exercising, but allow us to confirm that they haven't had an impact on your cardiovascular system. Cardiac symptoms. This is a reference to what you've already mentioned here. Do you have any symptoms that could be pointing to the heart? If you do, we need to actually take them seriously and see what we can do about them. Significant medical history, I've already gone through that. And then significant family history. Mother, father, first-degree relatives. We also encourage, if possible, and if you end up in this category of being a high-risk athlete, undergo cardiac tests, which are actually available, and we can make them available to the team at a discounted rate. Relevant blood tests. Some of these, especially when you're doing genetic testing, may be a bit hefty, but there's groups that have come up and NGOs that have come up to help us be able to pick out what these congenital illnesses could be, so you can save lives. Imaging tests. Here we're talking about things like HS X-ray, CT scan, and an MRI. So what we're talking about when we say a 12-lead electrogram, this is a simple test that's done. Takes us about 5 minutes. That's one of my colleagues at the medical center where I work. Takes about 5 minutes alone, and we're able to tell quite a bit about the heart. This is more advanced testing. Let me skip that a little bit and go to the cardiogram test. When you're talking about cardiac evaluation, we talk about the 12-lead ECG and the echo. With these two, we probably have about 60% of the information about you. And we can actually, even if it's a high-risk individual you're assessing, we can tell you, please go on. You can actually proceed with exercise. We are happy with you, just with these two. Yeah. In terms of cost, this should not cost anything more than 12,000 shillings in most of the places in this city. Once again, we can discount that and help you. So this is a video. I'm not sure David is going to play. Let's see. Oh, it's actually moved forward.
We can play it.
Yeah. We can play it, right?
Able to play it, but from another slide.
That's okay. Oh, is it on playing here? Let me see. Can you still see my screen? No. Let me leave that alone. That's taking us away from where we are.
We'll let it play after your presentation,
okay. No problem. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, let me leave that alone then. Yeah. Trying to go back where I was. No. Having a few issues going back to where I was. Let me see if I can close this.
Yeah.
This is not easy.
Sometimes.
That's why. Okay, I'm back. So once again, we're talking about this test. So we have 60% of the information already through having done the ECG and the echo. We can get another 20% of the information by putting you through the computerized treadmill. I think that will also be played later. So the treadmill that actually is connected to a computer that has assessments looking at you. We go through some criteria that look at your risk of getting a heart attack in the next 2 or 3 years. So with this, we actually are able to assess you with 80% accuracy, your risk of developing a heart attack in the next 2 or 3 years. We do this regularly for patients who have hypertension or diabetes, but we can also do this for athletes when you're considering you. Now, so this would be a full cardiac evaluation, giving us about 80% of the information we need, being able to allow us to clear you and allow you to proceed with exercise. Now, if we discover things that would make us be worried about it, we are able to actually assess the arteries of the heart directly using what is known as a coronary angiogram. Here, we actually look at the arteries of the heart using dye. This is actually iodine. Once again, I'll allow David to play them so I don't get out of my presentation. And if there are blockages, we're able to use what is known as wires and balloons and stents to restore that. So I've actually had to do this people as young as 35, one of whom was actually a regular runner, who developed a heart attack, and we were actually able to restore him to full health. And he is actually doing well and has gone back to running now, having done this. So sometimes when we're talking about abnormal rhythms, we are unable to catch them with the first test called the ECG. So we're able to actually monitor the heart over a period of time. This would be between 24 hours to even as long as 3 months using gadgets. So this one is a maximum 7-day monitoring to assess if we're going to pick up some of those palpitations that I mentioned by some of the questions among the audience. My heart occasionally flutters. What could be wrong? So you pick up the exact rhythm using the Holter and able to assist you either with medication or advice or procedure if it's necessary. Now, we'll be talking about some of the treatments that are available for patients or people or athletes who actually are at risk of sudden death. This is a regular pacemaker. We also have pacemakers that can actually shock our patients, so that you actually have a shocking lead put in here and it actually saves life. There's one particular video I know David will play for a footballer whose life was saved twice. Once by using the external electrical defibrillator. Secondly, when they fixed the pacemaker, they was able to shock him back and bring him back to life. And is, I think, around 32 now. So how do we treat? Proper hydration during exercise. I know David alluded to this. Proper medication when you discover what the issue is, what the illness could be, and then put them on medication. I mentioned looking at the arteries of the heart directly, and then stenting them if they require that. And then now we have the rehabilitation of abnormal coronary arteries. We mentioned this as one of the congenital abnormalities that can be there, where you actually have someone born with arteries that don't connect with the heart the proper way. They can actually be implanted. We recently had a young man of 35 who required this, and it saved his life. We can also implant what is known as a cardiovascular defibrillator. This is a machine that actually shocks the heart back to normal beats when the heart is misbehaving. And we have a number of such athletes still playing and still participating and able to save their lives and allow them to live long. Then there is a way we can actually, it's called ablation of abnormal heart rhythms and restore normal heart rhythms. So the last three are advanced treatment. The first two are things that we can actually do regularly without much ado and at a lower cost. And a major take-home message I wanted to bring out is this. This should be done to everybody who's participating in any runs that you guys are involved in. Yearly, this would be useful. But then if you are older than 40, this is actually necessary, so we can actually ensure that we take care of you and we do not allow any of these things that are so catastrophic to happen to our teams. I think I am majorly done. So that's a test of the coronary arteries of the heart to see whether they are blocked, and we're able to actually restore. This is done in about 10 or so hospitals in this city, so it's widely available in this city. And there's this last video. David, do you want to play this, or do you want to do this later?
We can play all of them. Are you ready?
Okay.
Are you done with the slides? We can play all of them at a go and let you explain.
Yes. So this last test is the one where we actually ablate abnormal heart rhythms. This is available in the city. We mentioned there's one of the arrhythmia or abnormal heart rhythms conditions that you can actually cure. So you're able to do this in the city, and you can actually restore people who have Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome back to normal and reduce the risk of sudden cardiac death. I think we're ready now for the videos, David, and then you can take on the questions.
All right. Okay. Then we can play the videos. Just 1 second.
Do I stop sharing?
Yes, and Rachel will play the videos.
Okay, so I've stopped sharing.
She prepares. That was very, very insightful, Daktari. And I think for those of us who are here, it really helps that we have people who are actually knowledgeable on sports, because I think that relationship, like Dr. Hazel also mentioned, of course, you need to understand. You just don't need to be a general doctor. A deeper understanding of sports is very helpful. And I'm sure that soon, Daktari, we shall be speaking to you for the discounts you are able to offer. There is a very large crowd. We think I've hit 280 at some point and heading 300. And there are many, but I think it's important, especially when you highlight. You normally get, sometimes we fear from afar, but obviously it looks like it's possible for us to be able to actually do this without having to break into a bank, so to speak. Okay, we are selecting those.
Can you see my screen, David? The right screen? I'm scared that I'm showing the wrong screen.
But play the video.
Sorry?
You can see the screen, but the video needs to play, yeah.
Okay, but you can see the screen, the video screen, yeah? So let me start
Yes,
playing
we have.
it. First
Yes.
confirm. Okay. Okay, so I'll play it and Daktari can talk through it as I pull the next one.
Okay.
Sorry, Daktari, I start with the football one, eh?
Yes, you can start with that one.
Okay, sorry. Just give me a sec, kindly.
So in the first video, we are seeing Tom Lockey. Tom Lockey plays for Luton. He collapsed twice on the field. The first time, the paramedics were able to save his life with an automated electrical defibrillator. So this is that gadget that Hazel was demonstrating to us with some pads that are put on one at the sternum, one on the left lateral aspect of the chest, and to shock him to life. The second one, which is the video now Rachel is going to play for us, he already has a defibrillator or a pacemaker in his chest, and this was able to save his life. He was a captain of Luton when he got his first cardiac arrest and was rescued. I'm not sure he came back as a captain, but continued to play for the football team. Rachel, are you able to play it?
Yeah.
So the video is actually widely available. I got it in Daily Motion. It's actually available on YouTube. The one that you're going to see the most is Christian Eriksen. Christian Eriksen is a Danish player who, in a match between Denmark and Finland, also suffered a cardiac arrest. He underwent a cardiac assessment, like I already showed you here, and was discovered to have a cardiac illness, and they actually put him on medication, and he's doing well. I'm not sure if he has a gadget, but Tom for sure has a gadget. I came across at least 2 patients or 2 footballers actively playing football who are able to do so simply because of the gadgets that are, alert and watch on the heart, and once you get abnormal heart rhythms, they're able to sort it out. We are also able to do some more things. Dr. Hazel mentioned something known as hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. We're able to actually restore the abnormal structure of the heart, but requires surgery, and after that, the person can actually go back to playing football. In terms of the arrhythmias, we can cure Wolff-Parkinson-White. The others actually require medication, long-term medication. And with some, you may have to moderate how much exercise you're doing. Competitive sports for someone who already has a documented cardiac illness is always tricky, but there are some who've been able to go forward with the full knowledge of what the risks are and with very good backup in terms of a medical team that actually comes forth and helps them. David, I don't know if I can talk about when we first got together in 2018. I'll not mention names, but I can talk about what we discovered. Is that okay, or what do you think?
Go ahead, Dr.
So in 2018, unfortunately, David's team lost someone in the Kilimanjaro Marathon. And it was now after the fact that we're trying to identify what happened. We screened the family and we discovered something known as Brugada syndrome. Brugada basically affects young men before the age of 40. So that means when you have someone who has a history of fainting, someone who has a problem approaching water, especially going across swimming, someone who has convulsions, any of these things are actually alarms. Or if there's been a first-degree relative who has died suddenly, it becomes an issue of alarm. So able to screen the family. I got his sister and his brother and his nephews and nieces, and we discovered the same pattern in all of them. So that's a high-risk family, which would be well advised not to engage in competitive sports, because I know David and the team were really, perplexed because he was lost at the prime of his life, doing well career-wise, had participated in very many, athletic events when this actually happened. So we've had a few like that. I've also encountered a client who had epico hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, competitive footballer who had actually been asked to do a checkup. It was done initially in Italy, and they discovered it and they sent him back home. I was able to assess him, and then his was low risk because he never had an episode. It was just that during their routine checkup, they discovered this guy's heart was not normal. So for some of this, we actually put them through medication, close follow-up, and then we actually can allow supervised sports as long as the team is aware what this guy's issue is, and we're able to allow him to proceed because this guy's livelihood depended upon sports. So it was important to do a sort of a juggling kind of situation where we see, is life in danger? What can you do to ameliorate the danger so you can allow him to proceed with this exercise? Rachel, have we succeeded, or do we proceed with?
Maybe what we can do, we'll proceed with the questions, and then when those are ready, I'll bring them up.
Yes.
So just a question, and I think because Hazel is also unmuted, you can see how you want to answer it. One of the questions that we had posted a link for guys to send questions. One of them that came up was, why do runners have a low resting heart rate? That could have been answered, but I can just mention.
So as we mentioned, sorry.
Hazel, go on, Hazel, go on.
As we mentioned, runners are likely to have a lower heart rate because they are better conditioned. So we say the lower your heart rate, the more fit you are, your heart is enlarged, and it takes a longer time to relax. And we said it's being adapted to give you the best performance. So that is why it is physiological, and it is adaptation depending on both the electrical and the physical adaptations of the structure of the heart.
Agreed very much. So yes, athlete's heart is basically low heart rate that is documented. And the point is, in 3 to 6 months, if you stop exercise, the heart comes back to normal. So it's a physiological change. It is not an abnormal or sick heart. David or Rachel?
Then the other one is thickening of the heart walls for athletes and the risk associated.
Hazel, you want to answer that?
You can take in Nduiga.
Yes, so once again, that's a part of being an athlete's heart. So these hearts have very low heart rates. They could even have different kinds of, they're called pacemakers, so that the heart sort of in a changa to control the heartbeat. Different parts of the heart can actually do that. And you get thickening of the heart walls. In 3 months to 6 months, this has been known to recover. What has not been documented to recover is abnormal changes in the heart muscle with scar. That has been seen in enduring athletes. So it looks like the human body or the heart is telling us that there is a sort of a tipping point in terms of how much you can do in terms of exercise. So what you're doing is good. I've discussed a bit with both Jack and David about comrades. I'm not very, very happy with comrades and what it takes out of you. I can't stop them, but just evidence is building that there could be some changes for athletes' heart that go to the extreme. Mm-hmm. But as we stand now, the teaching is that athletes' heart are normal hearts, just physiologically adapted to the strain and the demands that these hearts have to go through. Within 3 months to 6 months, these hearts return to normal.
Thanks. I'm hoping mine is going back to normal so that we can do up to 10. Now is number 5. I have an abnormal ECG due to childhood infection. How do I continue to live a full life with a heart like mine?
Hazel?
Let me take that. So I think it depends, and I think it's difficult for either Nduiga or I to answer that question, because what childhood infection was it? What did it affect? To what extent? What is the heart rhythm? Some rhythms may appear abnormal, but they may not be dangerous. But I think it would be difficult for Nduiga or I to actually to reassure you and tell you that this is not dangerous. We literally have to see your ECG and probably get to see you and examine your heart. Or at least I wouldn't be comfortable. I don't know about Nduiga.
Yeah, the ECG is very useful. It's an important screening test. Remember, it was at the bottom of my list when I was talking about assessing low-risk individuals. The ECG is very sensitive, but not very specific. It's about 33% accurate in terms of telling us his heart is normal. If the ECG says you're normal, you're normal. But if it says you're abnormal, it means look further. How do we look further? We do the echo. The echo gets us to about 60% accuracy in terms of assessing you and telling you you are well. So that's why we keep grading these things. And I've said that for everybody, let's do a screening ECG. For some, we'll do the echo. If you're over 40, if there's been some symptoms, if you've had comorbidities, if you've lost first-degree relatives. So let's do the echo for you because it gets us to about 60% in terms of accuracy. For some, we'll go ahead and do the exercise stress test or some form of stress testing, gets us to about 80% accurate. For some, we may actually put them through the coronary angiogram, gets us to about 99% accurate. We never really get to 100% accurate. That tells us that science is always, never really reaches 100%. We can never tell you, sure bet. That's a term we don't use in medicine. But we are able to give you with a fair degree of certainty. This is where you stand. Do these measures and you should be able to live a healthy life. We should be able to participate in your leisure exercise or your runs.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess that one is too, you have to be checked to confirm that. Red flags to watch out as runners to avoid heart conditions and other health conditions that lead to heart conditions.
I think Hazel did address a few of those. And then we talk about the symptoms of heart disease. I think that also addresses that.
Yes, true. Okay, is it normal to have sharp pains on the heart chamber periodically? I have experienced this on the left-hand side.
If I may address that, it is not possible to say when you have pains in your chest where they're coming from, especially if they are sharp. Chest pain is never sharp, it's dull, because it's known as visceral kind of pain. The best description of heart pain is an elephant sitting on your chest. So it's a bit vague. It's in the chest, usually in the middle of the chest, but not sharp. Sharp chest pain usually isn't from the heart. If it's sharp when you breathe in deeply, yes, it could be from the covering of the heart, but not the heart itself. I don't know if that helps, but it's not really possible to say this pain is my heart, unless it's that kind of pain that we call an elephant sitting on your chest, or it's a discomfort or pain that comes when you're active. Then when you rest a little bit, it goes away. That could be the heart.
Okay, noted. There was one question, is it what causes heart failure that we have seen in athletes? I recently, last weekend, ran half a marathon and I got very weak, dizzy, blurry vision, nausea, and very high, consistent pounding heart rate of 90 to 110 while resting after the run for over 5 hours. Could I be having a heart problem?
Hazel?
I'll speak on that and Nduiga will hop on. Okay, I think you talked about dizziness, nausea. So some of these acute symptoms that you may have immediately after a run, some of them may be just due to dehydration, electrolyte imbalance. Because when we are sweating, it's a really hot day, you lose a lot of your sodium, your potassium may also drop. So sometimes because of dehydration and maybe then an element of heat, you may get such symptoms. But I think what would be worrisome is the heart rate persisting high and you are aware of it for at least 5 hours. So I think that should be checked on. Yeah, because usually, I mean, I don't know how frequent you run. Are you consistent? Are you generally fit? Because if you are, then we would expect you to recover to your baseline heart rate, which would be much lower within, I mean, a couple of minutes. 30 minutes, I mean, you should be at your baselines. So for me, I think what would be worrisome is that this persisted for at least 5 hours thereafter. So I would say this may need to be assessed.
Agreed fully.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Why does my ECG always say abnormal? Has it got something to do with running?
Once again, I think Dr. Hazel has addressed that with the earlier question. We need to see the ECG actually. And as we do that, please remember that the ECG is only 33% accurate, but very, very sensitive. When the ECG says abnormal, it means we look further. We do a test that gets us to at least 60% accuracy. Then at least we are not just 50-50. We at least have an edge in terms of saying this is not abnormal, you're well. Yes.
Yes, and I agree with that, Doctor. I think these are issues that you can never take chances, so best to ascertain. What is the impact of perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause on women's hearts?
Okay, let me take that. So we know that as we grow older, as women, our estrogen levels drop. Estrogen is sort of protective to the heart and the cardiovascular system, and that is why demographically, even when we see our studies, we see our patients, we find that, especially without comorbidities, we find that the incidence of things like heart attacks, strokes may be lower in females of reproductive age because of this protective element. But as we grow older, as we get to menopause, as we are producing less estrogen, our risk then starts to approach that of men. So one, estrogen is actually protective. And there's a whole lot of ways it does that. But also, I think in one of my slides, I alluded to estrogen actually causes vasodilation. It causes your blood vessels to dilate. So within a reasonable or within a normal range, dilation of your vessels is a good thing. It keeps your blood pressure low. So again, we see that our blood pressures may be tend to be lower as when we are younger females. And then also the heart rate. So actually, I think there's an element of palpitations in perimenopause. So apart from this, so there's that cardiovascular protection. So we lose it as we get towards menopause, or rather, it reduces. Then there's this tendency of women who are perimenopausal, menopausal, and postmenopausal to develop palpitations. So it's also because of now the changing hormonal milieu. I mean, your estrogen levels, the progesterone levels, the testosterone levels are now slightly higher. So that could also cause another hormonal imbalances may actually cause palpitations. So that's another thing that we find some of our perimenopausal and postmenopausal patients may complain about. But of course, also, this may need to be looked into. We wouldn't assure somebody, because I mean, if you're 50 years and having palpitations, I wouldn't just take, that's just your menopause. I would take one to try and look into it and just make sure that it's probably just hormonal and do something about it, because it can be quite bothersome. So yes, we lose our cardiovascular risk protection, reduces, and two, there are these other symptoms that may be associated with the different changing hormone levels.
David or Rachel?
David, you're muted.
Sorry. Gender-related issues in heart conditions.
Well, as Dr. Hazel has already alluded to, estrogen is very protective. Unfortunately, when estrogen dips around menopause, the testosterone levels begin to rise, and the risk of postmenopausal women in terms of heart conditions is the same as men. Beyond that, there are some predispositions in terms of genetic conditions that you find that would be more in men than in women. For instance, Brugada, the situation that happened to a colleague we lost in Kilimanjaro Marathon. Beyond that, by and large, especially after the age of 50, 55, we are the same.
Okay, good.
Allow me to read a follow-up question on that, just because Dr. is talking about that. Godfrey is asking, do lower testosterone levels in aging men impact heart health? And actually, if you've answered it, I think that's fine, but I just want to read it out because it's related to what you're discussing.
Not really. Actually, testosterone really drives the body, really drives the body. So lower testosterone levels theoretically would be safer for us. Having said that, is that as we age, there's degeneration that comes. As we age, basal metabolic rate lowers. As we age, we get what is known as syndrome X, or the metabolic syndrome coming in. So you get diabetes coming in, high blood pressure coming in, we get high cholesterol coming in, high uric acid coming in, thyroid dysfunction coming in. All of these things become an abnormal milieu, or is it the perfect storm, so to say, for heart conditions. So that the older you are, the more careful you have to be about you. So testosterone on its own going down would not say that that is the one trigger that would cause heart disease in the older people, but it's a combination of degeneration in all of these areas.
Okay, someone asks, someone asks, does everyone have a zone 2? I've heard otherwise. Doc, are you familiar with the zones, or sorry, you would be familiar with the zones. Sorry, I'm thinking too much Gamin.
Dr. Hazel?
Actually, when I saw this zone 2 business, I thought that was David's question. But I think zone 2 is that. I saw the heart rate levels. I think the higher the heart rate. I think I know, David, can you comment on that? Does everyone have a zone 2? I think it just basically depends on how well you're conditioned, how often you've been training. So there are people who just remain at their zone 2, but I don't know, haven't done much about the zone.
David, unmute, please. You're muted. Unmute.
Oops, someone took my rights, I think. Okay, everyone would have zone 2. Basically, the issue is, are you training in that zone? I think the question is,
did we just lose David?
Yeah, David, unmute again. Something is happening to his profile. Just unmute. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. You're unmuted now. Yeah.
So what we said when we looked at all the zones, the 5 zones, they're just a percentage of the max heart rate. And we said, how do we explained how you would get your max heart rate. Then you take a percentage of that. So we had zone 1, 50 to 60, zone 2, light, 60 to 70, moderate, 70 to 80, which is zone 3, zone 4, 80 to 90. So all of us have those zones. The question is, are you training in those zones? And training in those zones, and you remember there is one I projected of mine for today. You can see all of it was in 60-something% was in zone 2. It's just a matter of just running slowly. And those lower zones help our body to adapt to the hard work that we do. We say adaptations don't happen during the hard work. Adaptations happen when after the hard work, when you recover, then the body, in fact, someone says the body calls the all faculties into a meeting and said, hey, look, this guy pushed us so hard. Now we have to create the resources, the mitochondria to support that hard work. But those can only be developed if we have time to recover. But if we consistently push, then we have no time to develop the mitochondria and the related the requirements to be able to support the hard work for the days ahead. So basically, yes, everyone has a zone 2. You just need to be able to. The thing is, it's a training zone that and is all an issue of the pace that you put in training and the effort. Then we have another question. My resting heart rate keeps on oscillating from 43 to 55, depending on the kind of run rest. Is this normal? And then someone says if there will be a question to... Okay, sorry. I think we answered that first.
Dr. Hazel?
I think we already answered that one about the resting heart. This question.
The oscillation. I think the issue was the oscillation. Would you have a heart rate today of 43, another one of 55? And I think you did mention, depending, of course, on the intensity and other factors. I think you did mention the factors that affect that resting heart rate. So I believe that's what we had addressed that. I hope they took note. And if there are additional follow-ups, we can take that. Then someone had written if there will be okay. I did notice in his last 2 runs, one of us who left us had his heart rate low, below 70 beats per minute while doing his 16-kilometer run. What could have gone wrong? Basically, without necessarily discussing that, but basically there was the heart rate was a bit lower on that morning, and if you look at the pace versus the heart rate, it was not like in tandem. But basically, the question is you are pushing, but your heart rate is low, but the speed should not. Your heart should actually be at a very high, probably towards red, but you are way in the blue. Or in the lower ranges. Doc, what would, and that was the morning of that incident. So what would you comment about that your heart rate is not matching the activity you are doing?
So technically, this is known as chronotropic mismatch or incongruence. Now, I have several questions to ask about that, but we also don't like discussing too much, personal issues. What I would say is,
I think maybe what we can do, Dr. is to probably answer it broadly as opposed to related.
Okay, maybe. So it's called chronotropic incongruence. It may not be a big issue as is chronotropic incompetence. That means the heart is completely unable to rise to the red zone like you mentioned it, but that should be coupled with inability to actually do the run. Because what you seem to be saying is that he actually managed to do the run, but his heart rate did not rise, isn't it? So when you do see a change in baseline that affects the level of activity, or a change in baseline that affects your well-being, please come in, let's have a look, because you're not the same person who was running last month or even 3 months ago. We'll probably say that you're well, or we'll probably adjust this or adjust the other, or we could discover one thing that is beginning to go off that shouldn't be allowed to go off. Once again, remember that with the age comes a lowering of basal metabolic rate, and with the lowering of hormone levels, someone has already mentioned testosterone, and in comes to play quite a number of other hitherto unknown genetic influences that could affect your well-being. So once again, let's encourage you to come in for a checkup. The list I gave you earlier is actually a very good one when you do begin to notice there's something going wrong.
Thanks, Dr. And in the interest of time, we shall, because I know there are many more coming and we may not necessarily be able to take all of them in this session. I see my system buffering. Let me go to the next slide. Share. I wasn't able to move, so let me just do that again. Okay, let me just ask the next question of my slides on the phone. So the other one is it safe to exercise when your BP is high? What safety precautions should one take?
Dr. Hazel?
I think if your BP is markedly elevated, it wouldn't be safe because
Dr. Hazel, we are losing you now. Okay. Dr. Hazel,
with a sudden cardiac death or some.
okay, Dr.
Hazel, we didn't get that, but
okay, let
basically,
Nduiga take that as I sort myself out.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So what she's saying is that high blood pressure levels are not good for you. We do know that the high blood pressure, higher than 140/90 over a persistent period of time, shortens your life, puts your eyes at risk, puts your heart at risk, damages your kidneys, puts you at a risk of stroke. Those very high blood pressure levels can actually cause catastrophe. So for that particular runner, I'd suggest that you allow us to control your pressure better. Most likely there's a reason why it's not being well controlled. It may require better evaluation or more in-depth evaluation so that we understand whether or not there's hormonal, spikes of hormones that are causing this. Could you have some issues with the kidney? Could it be that the drugs you're using may not be doing very well with you? So something should be done to get you to normal blood pressure, but you shouldn't stop exercising. Please continue, but please allow us, even as we proceed, to do something about that. David, with your permission, I've seen someone has raised my concern over the Comrades Marathon. I am not against it. I'm just saying that there is evidence coming in of abnormal changes in the heart with endurance athletes. So that's not just Comrade Marathon, it talks about also competitive athletes, especially the ones who do long distance. So there are some changes that we're beginning to see that may indicate maybe at some point in terms of pushing ourselves, we are reaching a tipping point. So I won't say anything more than that because there's no consensus. But to say, as you're beginning to think about your health, you're going to consider, try and choose what may be less of an impact on your health than what may require tremendous exertion on your part. David and Rachel?
Okay. I'm a recreational runner who is hypertensive. What are the potential actions that I should take to prevent a potential heart attack or death, as well as normalize my blood pressure? I run 6 times a week. I think you did mention that about the control of that pressure, so we can skip that one. Please discuss on increased palpitations experienced by athletes, especially when they are resting. This happens mostly when training volume is high.
I think that may directly have to do with dehydration. Most likely dehydration. Let's watch our fluid status. It's very important. Let's watch what time we're actually going through exercise. Remember that changes in humidity, especially more than anything else, do affect our ability to be able to sweat, do affect our ability to be able to it's called homeostasis, maintain our fluid and electrolyte balance. That sounds to me like electrolytes. But if you're hydrating well, you're taking balanced fluids, including isotonic fluids during exercise, you're still having a problem, please come in and assess. There may be something that's just beginning to rear its head that requires attention.
Okay, and someone says, sometimes my heart rate shoots to a maximum of 220 while running. What is the possible cause?
And David, I believe that would be normal.
Yes. Yes, I think depending on who it is and where they are and the level of action, I would again say that, if you're not pushing too hard and you're 220, it could be, it is high. And basically, it sounds quite high for, unless you've gone all out for, a very, which you can only sustain for so long. Again, probably to check is probably, there's no harm in being checked, just for precaution. But it shouldn't be the norm that your heart is going to 220 and 200 every other run, even if you're pushing every day. So I'll just take one last one, then we can go to the next point. Sorry, someone asked what is normally happening when your Garmin is saying that you have a normal heart rate. I think the beeping, the Garmin, let me answer that one. Depending on what setting you have on the Garmin and you reach that level, for example, 180 is what has been set, then it will start beeping. So what you need to probably check is that setting according to what your max heart rate should be. So that, for example, if you set at 160 and 160 is something you go through every other time, then you could adjust it. Of course, you also need to check what is your max heart rate to be able to see how to set that. And we talked about the kind of test you would need to do to check that max heart rate. Do stimulants including things like energy bars, drinking gels, Gatorade, or even coffee taken during run affect the heart? Let me just mention, Dr. before you come in, that energy bars and Gatorade and the gels and the sports drink we take are not stimulants. Of course, some of them have caffeine, so caffeine is caffeine in them, so that's a bit of a stimulant. But the key essence of the gels is to be able to support the energy requirements for the body, because the body can only store about 2,000 calories of in it, depend 2,000, 2,400, depending on size. So if you are doing endurance sports that need more than that, you cannot eat food to provide that energy because the digestion is shunted. The body takes away blood from the digestion process and takes it to the limbs that require it. In that case, for you to have that energy, you need something that instantly sort of injects the energy quickly without going through the rigorous digestion process. And that's why we take gels. So those are not doping. They are not stimulants. They're just helping to support the activity because the body cannot digest at that point. Things like Gatorade that we take, again, are very critical because we are saying that in the sweating, you are losing electrolytes. And we have seen that one of the major causes of the heart can cause a heart issue is actually running out of electrolytes, because you need the electrolytes for the heart to function. So when you deplete completely, then you're likely to have a problem. So these sports drinks, and I'm not talking about Red Bull, that is an energy drink. A sports drink has some calories in it, it has some electrolytes in it, and some of them will have caffeine to support the activity. And they're available and legal to everyone. So there is no problem in taking that. In fact, we should take those so that we are not consistently compromising our heart. Again, we normally say that if you're sweating a lot and you are taking plain water, you are actually diluting the little electrolytes that are left in your body. So you are actually making an already bad situation worse. So that's why plain water is not always is actually not the right thing to take, especially when you are either running long, running in hot conditions, or pushing hard. So that's where the electrolytes come in. So maybe, Dr. any comments on any of the other ones, on stimulants?
So the concern we have is actually of the constituents. Bodybuilders have carnitine containing in drinks. And then for stimulants, we have amphetamine. So it's more to do with what the ingredients are. You notice like the IAAF comes and screens the urine to look for steroids, to look for any other products that could actually have been performance enhancing. So that's where our issue is. As you enhance performance, it's normally at the detriment of your heart health, detriment of your cardiovascular system. So that's what we are concerned about. That's what we encourage you not to take. David?
Yeah. Okay, all right. That's okay now. Rich, are we ready to share, or shall I go to the last few slides?
On the questions, you mean?
No, on the videos?
No, just continue the slides.
Okay. Just try and put the original slides. I'm not able to resume share for some reason on my screen. But the original slides that have the last few slides for the presentation. We are about winding up in the next 10 or so minutes. So, Dr. again, we shall be looking out to as to how we can engage a bit more and get discounted rates for everyone to be able to test. Again, for all of us here, we are also looking at organizing a first aid session, because I think it's important. We all want to be able to, one, support a runner should something happen when we are next to them. But importantly, we want the other runner to also be able to support us. So it's our responsibility to make sure that when we do that in whatever arrangement we have, that your friends you run with are there, so that if you can help them, they can also help you. So just what's coming on screen, I think just wanted to mention a few aspects of safety that we can take care of. I mean, we can have for ourselves. There's something that actually identifies you as, when should you be, God forbid, collapse. We have seen people with very good insurance covers collapse, bikers, runners collapse, and they are taken to places, to hospitals, and people are looking for them. It is important that you have some kind of an identification. Importantly, I say, if I have got an identification that says my name is David, so no one knows who to contact, and I'm not there to answer that, to my name. So it's important that you have something that shows your contacts. I actually make those bands, and they are also available for a very low price. And it's, for me, I say it's something I don't leave the house without. Very important, so that we can take care of ourselves. I actually say is your voice when you can't speak for yourself. Additionally, and we have seen in the last, we can go to the next one, in the last few races, without necessarily going into the details, for us to try and get some cover of sorts, so that should you be in a race and an incident happens, you can be evacuated. The costs are very, very, very low. If you look at annually, something like 3,100 here, we've got 7,200, and all this can be availed. I think we have the forum chat room and others we can share with others, so that this information is there. I think it's important. If you look at those numbers, it's probably about 10 shillings a day or 30 shillings a day for a year's coverage. But I think it's time we started taking those kinds of precautions ourselves. We have been things have been mentioned about people collapsing and support when there are races. It's very, very important that even us who organize races have some kind of support in terms of ambulance and medics. I go a step further to ask what is the equipment in those ambulances, because you do not have an ambulance that doesn't have a defibrillator when you need it, that doesn't have paramedics. Paramedics in, you just have the driver and maybe someone who may not be able to attend to situations, because when this happens, the very initial few seconds are very key. So it's important for us to be able to act very quickly. And the only way we can act very quickly is to have those resources around us, especially in the runs that we host. And I guess when we have certain numbers, whether it's club run or races, we really must put that into account. And for this, very grateful to Dr. Nduiga and Dr. Hazel, and their contacts are there. Dr. Nduiga has the Heart Breathing Medical Center. Dr. Nduiga will be coming in very soon. And thank you so much for that support. And I think you've all had the kind of expertise he and Dr. Hazel have. Dr. Hazel as well. The contacts are there. We are also recording all this, so I will be able to share so that those who may not have listened to fully, or those who may want to listen again, do listen. Important takeaways is, of course, for us to be tested, for us to be able to look at first aid, to look at, are we deteriorating? We can't push. I think we can't slap the same way all the years from when we were 40 to 50 and 60 just to evaluate. But I think those constant checks are very, very important. The general practices, I think for me, one of the key things is the distraction we could be doing on a daily basis as we train. Are we hydrating? Are we taking the right stuff? Are we resting? Are we recovering? So in the quest of chasing fitness, we must not be getting some points one way and losing so many other points another way. Another very key is actually the wellness in terms of other aspects like sleep. Sleep is very fundamental. In fact, they say if there's anything that will sort out many of your issues is sleep. And unfortunately, every so often we don't sleep too much. A little while ago, I must speak for myself. 4 hours used to be okay. I know I still run at the time that I run, but I'm also around my bed chicken time. I think my alarm to go to bed must be almost going. So I'm trying to get quite some time of sleep, and I'm very actually diligent and disciplined on completing work by a certain time, eating by a certain time, being around the bed by a certain time, because all those things have impact. I think the key thing is that we are losing small bonga points here and there. And just to be able to understand changes within our bodies as on a day-to-day basis, so that you can be able to highlight that this is not normal. I don't feel right. And when we don't feel right, let's interrogate what the issues are, so that we may be able to catch some of those things. But importantly, let's get tested. Let's have the baseline right. And so that we can all be, I mean, it's better. They say prevention is better than cure. It's better to know you have something than learn about it a bit too late. Doctor, let me ask you something. There's an issue about magnesium, yeah, because they say when you lose magnesium, that's what makes your blood vessels dilate. And sometimes you're not getting enough of those supplements from the food. And so there's recommendations to take things like magnesium. What would you comment on that? Dr. Nduiga? Dr. Hazel as well?
Thank
Yes,
you
I
so
can-
much. Yes. Now, magnesium is interesting. We are cautious about magnesium. The levels of magnesium and calcium in the body are very low. So don't take don't swallow wholesome the advice about magnesium. Do not, because the levels of magnesium in the blood are very low. We suggest that you eat healthy. Supplements, especially if you are young, are not a very good idea. The body runs more with potassium and sodium and water than it does with this we call trace elements. So I would not be very comfortable anybody supplementing himself with magnesium. If you're not sure, come in, you do a blood test. And for the majority of the patients and the majority of the clients, if you're not on any other medication, magnesium levels are usually normal. So I would not want you to jump onto that bandwagon for magnesium. Stay away from it, because high magnesium levels are also not good for you.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. And I think with that, any other